Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to our TP Talks webinar series. I am joined today by Stacey Hansberry, Vice President, Customer Experience with McGraw-Hill Education. To introduce myself, I will be your moderator for this conversation today. My name is David Cook, and I'm the President and Customer Experience Strategist with Teleperformance and will facilitate conversations with Stacy. Before we get started, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. There are several related resources available for you to download in the resources widget to the right of your screen. This webinar is designed to be interactive. You will see multiple icons at the bottom of your console. If you have any questions, as we'd love to have you interact with us, please submit your questions in the Q&A window on the left of your screen. Do this anytime during this conversation, and we will address them during our designated Q&A session towards the end. And if you should have any technical issues, please click on the Help widget. It's the box that looks like a question mark. If you'd like to reach us, please use the email widget and send us an email. First and foremost, what is TP Talks? As curators of the customer experience, we are pleased to bring you this series of webinars called TP Talks. TP Talks is packaged in 30-minute bite-sized webinar segments and designed to help you as curators of customer experience at your companies to help you learn from best practices, big trends, innovations, and real-world success stories from people like yourselves. And speaking of people like yourselves, a little about Teleperformance, your host for today's webinar. Teleperformance has been serving leading industry brands for almost 4 decades, with a focus on supporting clients in 160 markets around the world. If you've ever called for customer care, engaged in a chat session, filled out a form, or posted online about a brand or experience, chances are you've interacted with us. We are a leading company across verticals and channels. This includes customer care, technical support, customer acquisition, digital solutions, analytics, back office, and other specialized services to ensure consistent and positive customer interactions. Why do I share this with you? Because Teleperformance is committed to partnering with our clients to find innovative ways to manage obstacles, and we are committed to helping our clients succeed. This webinar is a reflection on our commitment to that very concept. We are particularly proud of the awards we win and the recognition we get from analysts in various leadership quadrants that are published, as well as the recognition by our clients for our ability to help curate their customer experience. We believe making a palpable difference to your brand is our mission. I'd now like to introduce you to our guest speaker, Stacey Hansberry. Stacey is the Vice President of the Customer Experience team at McGraw-Hill Education, where she leads the organization focused on driving improvements in the customer experience, as well as shaping McGraw-Hill's digital support strategies. Stacey has built successful customer experience teams across the education and information technology, retail, and coaching industries in her career. Prior to McGraw-Hill, she held the leadership positions with Strive LLC, Staples Business Advantage, Staples, and the Credit Network. Today, Stacy will share her insights into McGraw-Hill's chat channel strategy and journey, best practices on forecasting and volume management for chat, and methods to improve their customer experience. With that, welcome, Stacy, and thank you. Again, if there are any questions you have today, please ensure that you send them via our Q&A widget to the left of your screen. Stacy, let's begin today's conversation by engaging the audience with a poll. For the audience, the poll question is this: in the past 3 years, what percentage increase have you witnessed in your chat channel adoption? The categories are 0 to 10%, 10 to 25%, 25 to 50%, 50 to 100%, or greater than 100%. Stacey, I'm going to ask you to share the results of the poll findings. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for your participation, and apologize for some of the technical difficulties. But it looks like based on the results, we've got about 6.3% of the people saying their chat adoption has increased less than 10%. 25% of the population has said it's increased between 10 and 25%. and over 30% of you have said it's increased between 25 and 50%. So that's great. So it seems like a lot of people are seeing the same, and I'm gotta keep going here. So 30%, over 30%, it's increased between 50 and 100%, and 6.3% of you have said it's increased by over 100%, which again, I think is really similar to what we're seeing at McGraw-Hill Education in terms of just the continued increase of chat as a channel in servicing customers. So excited to talk to you a little bit more about what we're doing.
Yeah, Stacy, thank you very much for that. And the next slide that we're going to get into is if we can move ahead, Srini, we're going to talk about the channels that are used to interact in the customer service realm. Obviously we have seen a significant evolution in this over the last several years, and I know that you have experienced a lot of this yourself. If you could talk a little bit about how the channel used by generation in particular have impacted your business, I think that'd be a really good way for us to get into a little bit into the depth of the chat migrations.
Yeah, so for those of you that might not be aware, our customer base is made up of higher ed students and instructors, and over 80% of our volume comes from the student population. We are absolutely continuing to see increases in millennials and Gen Z in our mix of student population, and that's had a direct impact on our chat volume. This younger generation obviously has a stronger preference for non-voice support channels, which you can see correlated, and there's some research here that Teleperformance has done to kind of support those findings.
Yeah, thank you. And do you see the impact of this increasing as you see more of the Gen X and millennials moving into the instructor ranks as well as the student universe?
So it's definitely increasing with instructors and students. I would say predominantly we're seeing, more of an increase with our student population, which tends to be made up of that younger population who prefers that as a contact method. So, it's not only is it easier for those students to initiate a chat from our website or our product, but more importantly, we know a lot of students in that generation, and even having kids myself, right, know that students prefer to interact digitally as opposed to via voice, and they'd much rather chat with someone than pick up the phone and call someone.
Very much understandable, and I think all of us with kids in that age bracket see the same thing. They would far and away rather text next to each other than pick up the phone and actually speak to somebody, and I think that's having an impact we're all seeing. The next area that we're going to go talk a little bit about are some of the reasons why consumers prefer each channel or have top favorite channel preferences. And we see that through the indication of consumer indications from our global customer service, global customer survey lab, which we call the CX lab, which is based in Lisbon, Portugal. We do an evaluation of all the interactions that we see across the engagements that we have. And we look for things like demographic information, channel preference, differences by country, by product. And this is a lab that gets us tremendous insights into what the customer experience is looking like and where trends and macro trends are going off in the industry. So what we're going to ask Stacy to talk a little bit about are some of the specifics within the email, web form, voice, and click to call, and how that may have come into play for you in your snapshot of volume changes in the next slide. And if you could talk a little bit about what is shown in the yearly volume makeup.
So I think one of the things we want to talk about here is just the volume change, as David discussed a little bit. And really what we've seen and how we've managed this shift is you can see just the dramatic increase we've seen from 2014 to 2018. And that growth that we've had, which is accounting for, over 30% of our overall volume year to date in chat. And what we've as we've seen that shift, we've done some things differently than we did back in 2013. So originally our reps were all trained to handle voice and only took chat as a backup when chat came into the queue. Given that chat was so minimal at the time and voice was over 97% of our contacts, it made sense. But as we progressed and more chats came in, we started to shift our approach, and we skilled a handful of agents to be primary chat agents who really took voice calls or other work as needed as backup. So in the way we approach it today with, as I said, chat being over 30% of our contacts, we have dedicated chat reps who they're predominantly on chat but are skilled to handle other types of contacts as a backup. And one of the questions that we got asked, in advance, and something that has come up, is how many chats our agents are handling at once. So currently we handle dual concurrency, where our reps can handle 2 chats at once. So what we've done is we've set up our chat that we have 2 types of skill sets for chat. So one is set up for what we term our easier, less complex issues, which is mostly tied to registering for our product. And the other skill set that agents can be skilled for is more technical in nature and a little bit more complex, focused on assisting our students and instructors with things like assignments and exams. And it can be definitely more technical in nature, as, that cuts across not only all of our platforms, but if you think about our products on many different operating systems as well as browsers, it can be pretty complex. So that's how we've handled it, and we've found so far that our agents are able to handle dual concurrency, especially in some of that easier, less complex chat type volume.
Thank you, Stacy. And just a follow-on question for you. One of the things that we've been asked and are pretty consistently asked is, how many chats do we feel is optimal for an agent to handle at one time, and how do we determine what the optimal level is?
Yeah, so this is something, I can go back in my experience back at Staples as well as now at McGraw-Hill. Have tested a bunch of different things out with this. So I would, in my experience, it's been obviously every industry and every contact type is different. So you've really got to look at the complexity of that particular interaction. But I do think that it's reasonable, based in my experience, to expect that if it's fairly straightforward types of interactions, that an agent can handle, multiple chats at once. And I would say usually no more than 2. In some cases, I've seen 3 work, but I think 2 tends to be optimal. And then really where it's more complex tends to be better with that, one-on-one interaction.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we've all seen how that can sometimes become a bit of a dynamic target, where as folks mature in that capability, they can handle multiples. But certainly a process everybody's got to go through and trial and error on their own. I think one other follow-on question, as you see the specific skill sets and requirements from a chat or non-voice agent evolving in the marketplace, at what point did you or do you make the determination that you've got to set up dedicated interaction queues as opposed to universal queues?
So for us, it's really been based on, seeing that continued volume increase and seeing the need for having to have dedicated chat agents. And if you think about just the skill set between a voice agent and a chat agent, it can be very different, where one is, voice interaction over the phone, and obviously the other being chat, more written form, and the, speed of which that interaction happens. So our hiring profiles have changed a little bit in that respect, and, really emphasizing the need to break out those channels to ensure that we're dedicating agents to chat to improve the customer experience, but also, not having them take different types of interaction within the same time frame, meaning they don't take a chat and then take a phone call and then an email. They really focus on chat, and if we move them based on, intraday or real-time needs, we'll move them to a different contact type for a period of time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I think if we look at this chart, you get a sense of the insights into how the chat trends have both increased year over year and are accelerating, as well as what are the trends on usage for the impacts for other channels. So as this continues to trend up, one of the questions, Stacy, that I'd have for you is, given these are some pretty stark or dramatic increases on the chat side, from your McGraw-Hill experience, can you give us an idea what the volumes look like today versus what you had been seeing in the past few years, and how they tie to the kind of overall industry that we're showing here?
Yeah, so we've seen some pretty dramatic increases in chat, as you can see just from the chart here in front of you. But we're up over 273% since 2014, and we've seen an overall decrease in our non-chat channel by over 31% since 2014.
Well, that is a quite dramatic, and in some cases, I think outpaces what we have seen from other industries. And certainly, I think as you look at the demographic that is driving your business, that certainly tends to explain some of that. One of the things that leads to is, the chaos that can create from a scheduling and forecasting perspective. And I'm hoping that you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit with the audience about some of the ways and methodologies you guys have adjusted for that in your forecasting methodology.
Sure. So like many of you, I'm sure, we look at historical data, right, to establish our patterns for days and intervals, months, and we also look at our peak versus non-peak time frame. So something that, many of you might not be aware of is we've got two pretty dramatic peak periods within the year. If you think about in higher education, back to school with the start of the fall and spring semesters. So we take all that information into account, and then we also look at things for planned product changes or any changes that we know are upcoming within our product, and determine what impact that may have on volume. Additionally, we look at something that we call our contact per activation rate, which really is as we take that sales forecast and how that breaks into activations as to how many students will be registering for our product. It helps give us an idea of volume change as we look at the contact per activation rate and try to tie that to, what the sales forecast looks like as another indicator. And then lastly, we look at expected student and instructor base, so what percentage of each, how that customer base is made up and what platforms they'll be using each semester, and then incorporate the impact on channels. So for example, as our student base has been changing, we're forecasting, more non-voice contacts based on what we're seeing.
Certainly that explains some of the ability, and I think as we've been engaged over the last 5 years, we've seen an ability to be more accurate, which has helped from a seasonal planning perspective in particular. One additional question that occurs to me is, if you could talk a little bit about the impact to the enhancement of the technology interaction platforms on the front end. Is that also a significant driver for you in the reduction in handles per activation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we think about, and I know this was a pre-submitted question that's come up, we've definitely seen an impact or an increase in our chat volume based on the shifting demographics of our population and, people's preference to use chat. Additionally, we have made it easier for people to find chat within our product. So we, put the chat icon in several additional places than where it was before, and we believe that's also been a driver of some of the increase we've seen because it's easier for people to get to and access.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I look at the next slide here, and I go to the KPI Improvement Snapshot, and that's one that I think you can feel pretty good about given the progress that's been made in the key performance indicators. One of the things that I think are curious about this is how we've adjusted the process within the workforce to become more customer-centric now that you're seeing that swing into the non-voice channels. I mean, we've touched on this a little bit, but if we can talk a little bit about how the customer experience and the customer outcome has been impacted, I think that'd be very insightful for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, so in the beginning, our chat processes were very black and white because we were predominantly dealing, with secondary education instructors and students. We were focused on things like grammar and, greetings, articulation. But what we found was that approach really wasn't driving the best customer experience, as it was generating delays in chat responses from our reps because they were so busy proofreading, multiple times to avoid grammatical mistakes and getting dinged on QA, et cetera. So over the last couple of years, we've shifted our focus to really be more about the content of the message to ensure what's being communicated is a positive experience for the customer and honestly matches the customer expectation. So overall, it's lowered our chat average handle time and increased customer satisfaction. And to support that, we adjusted our QA form to allow chat agents to communicate with the customer at the same level that the customer's communicating with them. So, even though some of our instructors still communicate with the traditional proper, sir, ma'am, please, thank you, we really find our younger students tend to communicate in more of an informal format. And so we're allowing and providing the opportunity for our agents to communicate with them in that same way.
Hey, that sounds like it's been a very positive evolution for you. Are there any other elements that you're doing or anything creative to help improve the customer experience inside of chat that are unique or specific to chat?
Yeah, the one other thing that we did that I'd mentioned that I think was really creative is last year we made a change where we moved to nonverbal coaching for all of our chat agents. So what that means is when a supervisor reviews a customer survey or when our QA reps, review an audit, all the coaching with the reps is done via chat. And so that way the reps get even more comfortable communicating in that environment and they can model any corrections to behaviors in that same format. It's had a big benefit for us.
Yeah, clearly this has been a very dynamic and changing environment. You guys have done a nice job reacting to it. Can you, to close out this particular slide, can you talk a little bit about the results that you're seeing from all the changes and how you attribute them?
Yeah, so, we've really seen some positive improvements in our customer impacting metrics. So our quality assurance numbers have risen over 6%, as have, results from our customer sat surveys. But really the thing I'm most proud of as I look at this space and the changes we've made is we've had over a 19% increase in our net promoter scores, which really speaks to a lot of the changes we've made and focus on chat and just overall driving that customer experience in a positive way.
Wow, that is a dramatic change and very, very exciting to see and to have been part of that journey with you. Thank you very much. And I want to take a segue now into the Q&A section for everybody to give a chance to voice their questions. Stacey, I'm going to ask your assistance here to actually read the questions as I see a little technical issue on my side, and we'll try to keep going along with you here as you pick through those.
Okay, let's see. So I'm going to see one that's asking how we measure our CSAT. So one of the things we do is from a real-time perspective of their interaction with McGraw-Hill Education and our customer service teams is we send them a survey, post-call survey, and ask them several questions. And one is a net promoter score question, and the other is customer effort and customer satisfaction. And then we gather those results. Additionally, the team does a lot of work drilling into our what we call DSAT, so reasons for dissatisfaction, and try to initiate opportunities to close those gaps. Let's see. Do I feel email is a dying channel? So it's interesting. In our business, we've definitely seen a dramatic decrease. I also think some of that is the nature of our interactions. So if you think about the types of issues that we're getting, it's really students and instructors who are trying to access their digital product or their content, and kind of time is of the essence, right? So they need to get in and get registered as well as get access to their assignments. And so they need a more immediate response than I think email tends to provide. So the shift we've seen is a lot of our email contacts tend to be more content related. So a question is wrong or information within our, digital product is incorrect, and those can take a little bit longer to resolve, and so people tend to use that. It's less urgent. So that's really the shift we've seen, is the less urgent type issues going to email, and focusing more on the voice and the chat. So someone asked what platform we're using for chat. We are actually using Salesforce. So we use Salesforce for our CRM overall, where we manage all our contacts, as well as for chat and email.
Yeah, Srini's been able to help me get back into here, and as we get through the back end of this, the question from an individual that is asking, are we referring strictly to web chats, or do we also include asynchronous messaging in this portfolio? And if not, is that a plan?
Yeah, so we take chats from two ways. So one is if they're on our website and they choose to chat with us there, as well as directly in our product. So within our digital product that we call Connect, which is our homework product and how instructors and students do assignments, right within that product, they're able to chat with us directly from there.
Thank you. And a couple of interesting ones that have come up. Dirk is asking if, from a user experience standpoint, do we use scripted responses in the methodology, or do you allow chats to the agent to do freestyling within their responses?
Yeah.
And how do you figure out what's best?
That's a great question. So we do a little bit of both. So we absolutely have some, what I would call canned responses for some of the common type issues that just helps, I think, with an efficiency standpoint for our agents. But we also allow them the flexibility and autonomy to be free form within their response.
That's great. And then, another question from a slightly different perspective from Carla. Gartner reports that calls are still the primary way customers want to interact. And if chat is not an offering, would that be considered a good experience or reason why customers wouldn't want to engage at all?
That's a good question. So, this one I'll kind of answer from my own personal opinion as well as experience. It's interesting that that's the finding. I guess what we're seeing, and I think a lot of this is just purely based on demographics, is chat is becoming more and more the number one choice for ways that students will interact with us, or their choice of how they want to interact with us. And I know even myself, from a personal opinion, having been in this customer service business for a long time, I still prefer chat. I'd much rather chat with someone than call. And personally, I get frustrated when it's not an offering. So I can think of an experience I had the other night. I was multitasking and trying to do something, and I needed some help on a particular website, and it took me a while digging around to find chat, but I did. But the reason I liked it is I was able to continue on with, other work while I was chatting with the agent. So to me, it's more efficient.
Yeah, even you get the purpose within the lag times there, but you still have somebody who's a relatively real-time response. One more question we have that I think would be interesting is the measurement of quality chats, and that specifically, if we ensure the chat volume that we're taking is a value add, how do we ensure that it's a value add, not just an interaction that could have been resolved via self-service, but the client chose to chat because it was made available? Do you look at selective chat offering or masking the chat opportunity at certain points in the transactions for McGraw-Hill?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we do have self-service opportunities and capabilities. So that is something that is absolutely within our products built in that students and instructors can just as easily get access to as they can chat. We have not gone down the path of kind of pushing self-service before they chat. So, I tend to be of the opinion from a customer experience perspective, I don't really want to force them into self-service. I'd like to give them the opportunity to interact with us in whatever way they feel best. And we do a good job of promoting self-service and making it accessible, but I don't want to force them into that. So we have stayed away from that thus far and really given them the option of both. And if they choose to chat, we'll chat with them, and we may give them that information next time if they want to self-service, but we don't force them through that.
Excellent. Stacy, thank you. Those are great answers, and thank you for doing the extra lifting there to pick things up on the platform issue. We're going to move to the closing section now, everyone. I really appreciate everybody's time today. We know how busy all of our schedules are, and you're giving us this much time. I hope there's value that's been offered for you. I'll remind everybody that an on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately one day after the webcast closes, and you can access it through the same link that you got in your calendar invitations. As a reminder to download the resources and watch the other webinars, which are available in the resource window to the right of the screen. There may be topics that are relevant and of interest for you. And as we bring this to closure, Stacy, I want to say in particular, thank you so much for the sharing what you've gone through in this journey in your channel migration and sharing all with us today. It's been very valuable, and I really, really appreciate it. I want to say thank you very much. Hope everybody has a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.